Bhante also progressed on to teaching Dharma to the Filipino teenagers in Buddhist junior high school. So we'll post a link to some of his work in the Philippines later in the chat as well. So currently, Bhante lives a nomadic monk life. So he lives in Perth, teaching a few meditation groups, as well as visiting Ajahn Brahm at Bodhiana Monastery. He continues his compassionate work by using innovative and therapeutic approaches to the teachings of Buddhism to offer relief from avoidable suffering. Yeah, so as always, this will be interactive session. So we'll start with a bit of meditation. Bhante will do a bit of a talk, and we'll have 30 minutes for question and answers. So if you have any questions in person, you're very welcome to ask. We can unmute ourselves, and also online, you know the drill. Post your questions in the chat at any time, and we'll get to it. Answer some good questions. Hopefully that will help all of us today. So yeah, this video will be recorded and uploaded on YouTube. So yeah, without further ado, over to you, Bhante.
Thank you very, very much, and welcome everybody. All right, so know that you're in good company, and I'm very blessed that you all came along. And it's good to be back in Sydney, even virtually. It's been a long time. And I'm very fond of Sydney. Like yourselves, we're all suffering. We've all got challenges. So we're going to share together. I hope you're going to bring some of your experiences and tools to the table and challenges. First of all, let's just get comfortable in our own skin, in our own bones. Let's just be where we are. We're so used to scattering, being in the past, being elsewhere, that it's really nice just sometimes to be with people who are undemanding, give our brains a rest, also rest from our inner chatter and conflicts, anxieties, or any negative thinking, our perfectionism, our expectations and demands. I'm going to ring a bell. Just be at peace. Nothing to get, nothing to be especially, nothing to get, nothing to achieve, nothing to prove. First of all, be comfortable without anything to focus on. Just be here. Let the mind be without demands for a while. And receive whatever's going on. And just let it come to you. If it's the feeling of your hands on your knees or wherever you're putting them, if it's any whirrings or sounds or the temperature, just let it be. Don't put any demands on your body for a while. Just allow your shoulders, your legs, your feet to be, if that's possible for you, and any injuries or anything. Give yourself a rest. No to-do list. No objects to sort out and arrange and get, and just being a good friend to yourself. We're all someone who suffers. Whoever is there listening right now, I know you suffer. We all do. So be sympathetic to yourself. Be that kind therapist to yourself. Be your best friend to yourself. Receive the breath like a friend meeting a friend. Extend your mercy to yourself. Often we're caught in judging, criticizing, demanding. So lift that weight off. Sometimes we're like a child who needs to be lifted up. We can't lift ourselves up. It's too much one person all on their own. So we have the beautiful experience of community right now. Non-judgmental, unconditional community. We're living in a world which has always uncertain times. It's always been the case. It's always been the way. We're entering into the network of relationships and advice woven originally by the very kind person, merciful person, deep and wise person. Fountain of generosity, compassion, charity, which can beautify our lives. You don't have to prove anything. It's a natural outcome that you notice your breathing. Listening to your body, it's really very important. This cathedral of bones, the echoes and the sounds and the experiences within our body tells us everything we need to know. So we need to listen from time to time and be with our skin, with our bones, with our muscles, with our organs, hour by hour as they process, release energy. It's a miracle in action. Give yourselves this compassion. Give yourself this moment. Proximate cause for compassion is seeing a person who has suffering. And you know you suffer. We all suffer. Self-care and opening to the unknown. Every moment we are born and simultaneously die. Born and die. And born and die and born and die and born and die. And this can be a cause for joy. It can be a vehicle for transformation. We're not obliged to our old habits, those grooves and those old formations. We can be released from them and experiment with the new. Not having to conform to fears, our fears or other people's fears. and prejudices and greed. So experience that. We have a new direction, new news, fresh and clear, beautiful new ideas to support growth and light and be a relief from stagnation, darkness and negativity, anxieties which are very common in our world. Meditation is like a downloading of your inner tuition. Later, you can put it into action. Let your life blossom. Great. Okay, so I hope my audio and my English is okay for everyone. If for anyone English is their second language and I start speaking too quickly, I apologize. All right. So for tonight's talk, a good friend of mine, Sydney Julianto, he said, Bante, what about talking either about caring for oneself and others, or the Buddha's advice on relationships, or facing the unknown, or something about understanding the dying process, or cultivating joy, or the Buddha's great compassion? I went, whoa, all right. Too many choices. I'm already getting phased and a tsunami of things. So let's squish them all like a diamond into one subject. So I said, what about cultivating compassionate living, caring for ourselves, others, and the world in unknown and uncertain times? It's kind of like wrap it all into one, just squish the whole thing and munch it all up and then put it down into a synthesized nothing. So I went, all right, that's what I've tried to do. So I've tried to then take these 5 main topics which are important ones that affect everyone. Self-care, totally important, something very close to everyone's heart. Relationships, we're all involved in them all the time. The unknown, not so far from this. Compassion and understanding the death process. So as I said, just to define, compassion means when you see another person and you know they're in trouble, you know they're in pain, and you wish to help them. Your response is there. So just to define when we're talking about compassion. And in the Buddha's teaching, there's a very key tool, a power tool, and it's called the investigation of Dharma, or an investigation of truths, the investigation of phenomena and things. If we're going to investigate self-care, look into it, open it up, unpack it. Or if we're going to look into relationships and go, okay, what do you mean? We're using this tool, and it's called Dhamma Vichaya in the Pali language. It's one of the 7 enlightenment factors. So it allows you to target and investigate, a kind of Sherlock Holmes unpacking and investigating. Very critical thinking. So what I want to do is to take those 5 main cores and then see how they intersect. So how does self-care, what's that got to do with the death process? Or what's the death process got to do with the unknown? Or what's self-care got to do with the unknown? Or what's self-care got to do with relationships? Or what's relationships got to do with compassion? Or compassion to do with death? Okay, so there's main 5. That's what I want to crosshatch. And I want to use questions. There's the skill in questions is very important. If we have lack of skill in questions, we can confuse ourselves. We can end up in the proverbial rabbit holes, losing time, wasting energy. And this is all of these topics are on a daily basis for us. I had a great blessing last night of a very good supporter friend who's just lost their mother to cancer, just maybe 5 days ago. And I know that they're in this process afterwards. So I was encouraging them to talk. And then they told me that it was a double whammy, that they were in a relationship, they weren't talking about it openly in public, but that person simultaneously died. And they were describing how they feel, that they feel empty inside, like with a kind of emptiness in the heart that can never be filled, how they feel cold and numb. So when we can sort of touch these real experiences with real people, what's happening? And this is one of the reasons why engaging in human regular life is so important for our practice, so that we have reference, not to be too disengaged. I want to give you some guiding questions to think, aha, so this is what we're talking about. When we talk about self-care, when we talk about relationships, so it's a bit vague, isn't it? It's a bit of a huge, blurry topic. I want to also give some contrast, so some positive and negative, so that we can understand it a bit better, and a few analogies, what if scenarios that to help process this. What if the unknown was fully embraced? What if, so what would be the result of that? Instead of fearing the unknown, what difference is that going to make? If there was curiosity instead of control and isolate and alienate and examine from pushing it away. What if we were opening to that and allowing ourselves to investigate with curiosity whatever it is we're looking at? And what if, another what if scenario, what if self-care was seen as essential for every human in preparation for the end that we will always, all of us, meet? Who knows when? How would it change how we treat ourselves and how we will treat others? There's an anecdote on a YouTube I saw where a man was hit by lightning. Bang, he hit the floor. He said his consciousness was out of his body. First thought that struck him, I thought I was quite good looking. Look, it's like this. Next, he turned around and two lights came to him. And then he saw in a flash outside time his whole life. Woof. And it wasn't his life as he experienced it. It was how everyone around him had experienced it. It's a complete, paradigm shift. And he went, oh God, I thought I was doing quite well. Look, I'm really upsetting a lot of people. I'm hurting a lot. I'm neglecting a lot of people. So it's kind of like a karmic account check-in. And basically these telepathic beings said, do you want to, this is your account. You can move on to the next plane, or you can keep going on Earth if you want. The body's still warm, you're good. So no, I'm gonna go back. I can do better than that. Sorry, I'm having a slobby life. So this can show us how the teachings and the practices are relevant with these what if scenarios. How does resisting or accepting the unknown affect your ability to care for yourself and others? Think about that. Are you open to a new idea? Are you open to a new practice? That would be the unknown, right? Are you okay to go to a country you don't know anything about? You don't know the language, you don't know the culture. Are you open? Are you open to others from that culture? And how does that openness or closeness affect your ability to care for others as well? How do my relationships with strangers or new experiences teach you about the unknown? Like a new language, a new musical instrument, some new exercises, a new place where they do exercise? Or is it just a closed book and you've already decided what you're going to be forever? Okay. So what are the risks when self-care is neglected? Especially when there's times of uncertainty and there's unknowns. We had the epidemic. We had a lot of time to look into this question. What's going to happen if self-care is neglected? And you might have seen this in relatives or in your own life. When you neglect, you become fat, you become skinny. Did you become with bad habits online or gambling or food or eating disorders? What happens when compassion is absent in relationships, for example? So what's a father like when he comes back from work and he doesn't see their child as having depression or anxiety? They're not sensitive, or you're just simply not allowed to be sick, so I'm super fit and healthy, you should be too, so this kind of thing. When compassion is absent in a teacher for the children in the class, for the children in the class towards the teacher, from children towards parents. So what has been think about this, what has been my biggest resistance to accepting the unknown? What's supporting you to be rigid and shut down? When have I felt most compassionate towards others? People who are in the face of loss? When did it really work for you and you really were in touch with that sense? It might be a person, a child, an elderly person, at home or abroad, or neighbors, family members. When you really, when it really comes home to you, someone who's suffering and you just really wish to help, or they're in the face of, as I say, of loss. Understanding death can be like learning to navigate a ship through a storm. The emotions can be so overpowering, so high. I had a brother up until 2021 in October. He lived in Northwest Australia. He's very brusque, very independent, tough little guy. And he loved to do the whole thing, barbecuing, having people over, racing his car out in the desert there. And most of all, he really loved being out on his own boat. He managed to do, he was doing an air conditioning thing. Smart move. Saved up money, 2 kids, 2 young, beautiful young girls, and a wife. He took the 2 girls and a couple out on the boat. And there's difficult waters where estuaries meet the ocean. You got two whole different flows going on there, and sandbanks are all over the place. And in spite of my advising not to do fishing and killing, he was into crabbing, and so there was a lot of that up that creek. The boat turned over, everything went wrong. He managed to get a message out. He stayed with the boat. The girls got to the shore, the couple got to the shore, and he drowned. And that got me to really imagine very carefully and research what is drowning like. And I kind of hope to imagine and discover that it's a quick thing, you black out, but no, it's very painful and slow. So I think this really also brought it home to me, the practical parts of it. This is really what happens step by step by step by step by step. And this caused me to mature much more about living relationships more, not to be childish and petty, and in the grander scheme of things, to be much more honorable and much more generous in our relationships, close relationships, if we can, to the extent that we can, to try. Can relationships, another analogy, can they be seen as mirrors for self-care and compassion? If we're neglecting ourselves, will we see that in our relationships? If we are lacking in compassion, macharya, this is called, it's kind of jealousy, it's pettiness, miserliness, cruelty. That's the opposite. So that's so important how the Buddha set forward a wave of trying to get people to cultivate self-care and compassion. And you can see that the impact on this will really reduce cruelty and self-hatred and self-neglect and all the spin-offs, whether it's alcoholism or whatever, binge eating and self-hatred and so on. What about the uncertain, the unknown? What if I encountered a stranger who needs help? It's one thing with brothers and sisters and flesh and blood and our group, my in-group, us. But what if I encounter a stranger who needed help while I was struggling with uncertainty? How might I respond? I was having a lot of uncertainties about planning a talk, and then in the side came all of these bante, and I was like, leave me alone. I'm all caught up in trying to plan a talk. And I was like, yeah, what is it? And one of the people who I'd been in contact with had been bitten by a dog and was struggling with the possibility of rabies. And this is a stranger. This is actually someone I've never personally physically met as well. And so a whole sequence and a chain of event. And I had to sort of drop the talk, attend to this. When I came back to the talk, I was so inspired. I had so much to talk about. Yes, this is what it's actually all about. So often life is doing that for you. It brings you exactly what you need at the right time, including this and also the cancer case, or even others, like perhaps my brother. He taught me a lot in this time. What if we fully embrace the unknown instead of fearing it, to have that curiosity? Remember that that's a very vital mindfulness aspect. So let's look again. How does, with self-care, first of all, remember our 5 things: self-care, understanding the death process, the unknown, relationships, and compassion. Self-care, how does my understanding of death influence how I approach or nurture relationships? Again, like I said with my brother, you know, if you really reflect, this person could go anytime. My father used to say to me, "Are you going to be around for my funeral?" I said, "Dad, you might outlive me. We don't know. We also just don't know." The more that we understand and become aware of the presence of death, can happen at any time, any moment, any day. I might not get to the end of this talk. Something might drop on my head, or I might choke on the water or something. So how does that approach and nurture relationships? And how does caring for myself influence how I show up in my relationships? If I'm really taking care of my health, my wealth, and not being irresponsible, if I'm honoring my talents, I'll be showing up well. I'll be showing up good. I'm not ashamed of what I've been doing. I'm not wondering how I can use people. These are the kind of questions that we can ask ourselves. How does compassion arise when confronting the process of dying? When we see people who are dying, who were physically beautiful, who were physically vital, who were physically healthy, and death can move so fast. One of the healthiest members of the community in the Philippines, I messaged them and there was strange answers back. And then came on the chat, it was her sister. She's in hospital, she's in the ICU. And this was a girl who was she was 24, many plans. She became pregnant naturally, young 20s. People want to find a mate. She'd become pregnant, miscarriage. The miscarriage led to problems with thyroid. Hyperthyroidism might sound like, well, a bit of a problem with the thyroid. No, it's very, very fast how it moves. She was in coma in the intensive care unit and dead while we were on the phone, while we were messaging. She's been taken to the ICU. What do you mean? What do you mean? What's happening? What's happening? Next thing I know, she's been pronounced dead. One of the brightest, shiniest, intelligent person with great intentions for their community and care for people. So great shock, brought it really home to me. You don't know who, you don't know when, you don't know why. We don't need to. We just need to know the nature. But if we care for ourselves and we're aware of this, and this is part of our own compassion, is to say, yeah, this is life. We're being born and dying at every moment. I don't assume anything. I don't assume anything. Everything is impermanent. Nothing's under control. Everything can happen at any time and frequently does. The more that we live like that's true, the more that we're in harmony with true nature of mind and matter. How can caring for myself help me face the unknown, the uncertain, with more resilience? We get bounce back when we can't control things. It's all the time. How does the fear of the unknown shape your compassion towards others? Are you only nice to people you know? If there's someone who's speaking a foreign language, okay, yeah, I'll get my Google Translate. Sorry, what do you want to say? Oh, really? Often monks are very judgmental of other monks. I'm fantastic, you know, sort of wonderful to everyone except for those monks over there. That's a very strange thing. There were some monks here who go around with little amulets, selling them table to table, where I do my arms around, and everyone keeps saying nasty things about these monks. And I noticed one of them had the rips in his robe, and I talked to him in Thai. He doesn't speak any English. You know, what's happened with your robe? And he said, he hasn't got that. He hasn't got any money. He hasn't got any supporters. They hardly get anything. So I did. I went to the Burmese temple and bought him a robe and passed it on to him. And suddenly both of us changed towards each other. He's not one of these fake monks who everyone's talking about. No, he's just a poor guy trying to do the best he can. He's not talented. He's not well supported. He's nothing. Trying to make his way. Don't give him a hard time. How do relationships cultivate compassion? How do you do that? We have to pay attention, not to what we expect people to be and want people to be, but what they really are. And be open to them being vulnerable and fragile. Listen to their reports. Yeah, share yours as well. Share your depression, share your anxiety, in the right time. Share your pain. And we'll see that, that's fine. Life can be like that. Because compassion changes the nature of relationships in so many different ways. What if I encountered a stranger who needed help? While I was struggling with uncertainty, how might I respond? What if? Do you want to hear a joke? Do you want to hear a humorous story? This is one of my favorite ones. It's a rainy night joke. So heavy, heavy, heavy rain and 2 o'clock in the morning. And a guy's in bed with his wife. He wakes up with a sound of knocking on the door. And his wife doesn't wake up. And he just hears this knocking. And he goes to the window and peers out. And there's a guy down there getting covered. It's driving rain, massively heavy rain. He decides to ignore it and go back to sleep. Carry on. After a while, he can't ignore the knocking anymore. And he gets up, gets his dressing gown on over his pajamas or whatever, goes downstairs, puts the door on the chain, opens the door a little bit, and there's this guy, and immediately comes to this stench of alcohol through the door. This guy is really drunk. And the guy said, what is it? Why are you banging on my door? It's 2 o'clock in the morning. And this voice comes back and says, excuse me, will you come and give me a push? Excuse me, can you give me a push, please? And the guy goes, what? He goes, you are drunk as a skunk. You shouldn't be driving. Look, I'm sorry. I'm not getting involved. I'm sorry. You're in the wrong place. Look, go along there. There's some more cottages along the way. There's some people up there. They might be able to help you. I'm sorry. I'm not getting involved. It's good. Closes the door, puts it on the lock, goes back to bed, turns the light out. So his wife, after a while, turns around and said, what was that about? He said, nothing. He's a guy. He's drunk. He goes, yes, but what did he want? What if? Yeah, he wanted it. I don't know. He wanted a push, he said. And he just goes, never mind. Go back to sleep. After a while, she says, what if everyone was like you? Huh? What if everyone was like that? There's a quiet bit. She goes, you remember the time that we broke down on the hard shoulder of the motorway that time? It was also raining. And you went to that nearby farm. Not only did they let you use their telephone, and they made you a flask of tea and put some biscuits in there to bring back to me on my own in the car. But they brought the tractor out and they gave you a tow as well. So what if everyone was as selfish as, and he go, all right, okay, I get the point. Okay, so he gets his jeans on over his t-shirt, and he gets his like thick vest on, and he gets some waterproofs on, and he goes downstairs again. He's a bit more ready now. He's got his Wellington boot, rubber boots on there. He opens the door and he looks out. Rain's pouring down. Looks up either side, and he can't see him. The guy anyway he goes, "Hey, I've come to give you that push. Where are you?" And through the dark night and the rain, this voice comes back and says, "I'm over here. I'm sitting on this swing." Enough joking. It's a bad habit. So moving back to our subject, think about this. What happens when self-care is neglected in the face of death? All right? How are you going to be that? And how does self-care transform when we accept the inevitability of death? So there's resistance and fear, and there's yes, it's fine, I accept. What happens when self-care is neglected in the face of death? Increased stress, anxiety, physical decline, proneness to addictions, and neglect. How does self-care transform when we accept the inevitability of death? A deeper appreciation of the present moment, the so-called mindfulness. The prioritization of nurturing well-being, a more mindful approach to life. Focus on what truly matters and managing stress effectively. So these happen when we can accept the inevitability of death. We're realistic about it. We won't make it go away by dyeing our hair color or having our teeth bleached or whatever it is. Relationships and compassion. So how do relationships flourish when compassion is central? And what happens to relationships when compassion is lacking? How do relationships flourish? Well, they flourish with empathy. I see you have a need. At least start with that. We don't have to go all the way to compassion yet, which is, I'm going to reach out and I'm going to help you. I'll do something. I'm going to act. That's compassion. Empathy is, I understand. I see. Yeah, you're overloaded. You're stressed. You need space. You need food. I get it. I do. Empathy, understanding, emotional support, and it helps build trust and connection. If you have a relationship of distrust with a close member of the family or someone, and you feel disconnected, maybe it's lacking compassion. Maybe you can change that. Maybe you can listen to what they need. It creates a nurturing environment. People feeling valued and cared for. And if you give this, you learn to give this, maybe that's what you've been lacking. Or maybe you're always saying, nobody's giving it to me, nobody's giving it to me. Well, maybe it's the other way around. Maybe we need to learn to give it, and then what goes around comes around. It creates also open communication and stronger bonds. If we're suffering with weak bonds and poor communication, maybe this is a key to start. And then you'll experience more fulfilling relationships and be able to have more resilience through the difficult times. Okay, what happens to relationships when compassion is lacking? Misunderstanding, tension, lacking emotional support, weaker, less fulfilling. So then we see some insight into these are the things the Buddha, he cares for humans, and he's giving all these tools and concerns to help us lift up above this. Above the petty squabbling, the divisions, the us and them, this religion, this country, that up. Listen to people, listen what they need. How can accepting uncertainty, our unknown, this is going to be with relationships, uncertainty, the unknown and relationships. How do they interjunction, whatever, integrate? How can accepting uncertainty strengthen our relationships first? Versus, how do relationships weaken when the unknown creates fear or resistance? So how can accepting uncertainty strengthen our relationships? Well, it fosters trust, openness, and deeper emotional connection. How do relationships weaken? It erodes communication and it creates distance. What happens when we embrace death as part of the unknown? Peace, acceptance, calmness, resilience, and being less fearful over what we can't control. These are taught in countless similes in the ancient Indian books in lots of different ways, animated. Okay. How does fearing death limit our acceptance of the unknown or uncertain conditions? Where we go, who we associate with, what we try. How does fearing death limit our acceptance of the unknown? It makes it hard to, it makes us having times where we have harder time accepting things. It's harder for us to adapt to the unpredictable. Resistance to fully engaging with the present moment. And that can make us just rigid in our body and in our attitudes and our habits. It's one of the reasons we as monks move. Okay. So I think that's probably giving you quite a bit to go on. Let's do a conclusion. How to wrap all this up. We've gone through these 5 critical aspects: self-care, understanding death process, confronting the unknown, nurturing relationships, cultivating compassion. So each of these holds significant value in our lives. Together, they're going to weave like a very comprehensive approach. You'll get to be living a meaningful existence. So if you can get all of those to work together, joy will come by itself. You don't have to directly work on joy. If we solve why joy is absent from our life through these kind of keys, it will come around by itself. Other people will notice it more than I think we do, in my experience. Self-care, it's not merely about pampering ourselves, recognizing and meeting our own needs, yet ensuring we're well equipped to face the challenges that are just around the corner. We don't know what those will be. When we practice self-care, we're better prepared to engage with the world and with the people around us in a healthier and more kind of balanced way. Understanding the death process. It's our own reality. We don't know when we're going to be facing this or how, but we can accept the inevitability, and doing that transforms our perspective on life. And that enables us to live a more fully well-lived life, embrace every moment with more appreciation, more purpose, or lose that less, regain it more. You put things in that bigger perspective. Confronting the unknown, living with the unknown, that often triggers fear, resistance. We can see this manifest in all kinds of things, from riots, borders. That's all that's all about the unknown, right? Through facing uncertainty, we grow. We get rid of the fears, even from playground age. Even you've seen an infant, when a stranger walks in the house, it's like the whole world just ended because mummy is safe. Who's that? You know. If we embrace the unknown with an open heart, it allows us to adapt and find resilience, reduce anxiety, and get inner peace throughout. Relationships, they're deeply affected by how we manage self-care, right? We've seen this through this talk. And relationships, vitally, our response to the unknown and unknown people, unknown places, and unknown events, unknown challenges. To be open. When we prioritize our well-being, our relationships flourish. Conversely, neglecting self-care strains the connections. It causes misunderstandings and conflict. And finally, it's compassion. That acts as a bridge connecting all of those aspects, cultivating compassion we enhance our relationships, and we approach the unknown with kindness and face the death process with a sense of understanding and acceptance. So if we bring the Buddha's teachings into these 5 areas, we're going to recognize their transformative power. These teachings alleviate stress for countless individuals, showing that when we apply them through cultivating self-care, understanding death, embracing uncertainty, nurturing compassion, we can bring that much more joy to improve not only our lives, which will happen, lives of countless other people as well. So carry the insights forward and strive to apply them in daily lives. Come back, refer to the talk, deeply reflect. I've given you a lot of questions which were meant to provoke and direct you in a direction. Now take it on your own. If you do that, you'll not only enrich your own existence, but also contribute positively to the lives around you. A mature and thoughtful application of those teachings, we can navigate complexities of life with grace and wisdom, and that will lead us to a journey which has more meaningful and fulfilling effectiveness. So with that, I'd like to bring my reflection to a close, and I really look forward to your questions. I love the ones we had last time. I really enjoyed that. So please don't be afraid. Share and share alike.
Thank you, Bhante. Just going to turn this.
Welcome.
You've definitely given me a lot of questions to think about. So I really appreciate it. While we give some time to people online to think about what questions they want to ask, we have a couple of questions messaged here. So the first question this person asked is, for people who has strong tendencies to want to control their lives, what advice do you have for them to work with it?
I was recently had to leave Australia and I wasn't sure where I was going. And I was on the point of vomiting with anxiety. And I had an incredibly strong migraine because of this, anxiety, migraine, and everything. I was going to Singapore and I was sure there was going to be a temple that sort of showed up, and there wasn't any. And I realized I'm getting closer to the flight time, and there just wasn't anyone showing up. It's just very difficult to find places. So I found that what worked under these conditions was just simply looking at everything around you that's not under control, that isn't by your design. Look at every single atom, every single thing. And this has the effect of increasing acceptance in every moment. You know, did you design your fingernails? No. You just got them, you know, like they're not your choice. You know, did you discover, you know, did you choose this or that? Or did you put this in? No, it was already there. What's this scratch? Is that broken? Everything's broken, like the Bob Dylan song. Is that you look at this crumbling and out of control nature and you just open to it. Because usually we're sort of trying to isolate everything down and get all of our time and space and events under control. We're mad for it. We're addicts for this. But actually, the reality is much different. So, I mean, also, if you walk in nature or look around anywhere, everywhere, it's a universal characteristic that, as Ajahn Brahm's book says, relax or talk, you know, relax, everything's out of control. This is actually one of the ways to do it, is to say, well, what is under control? Because nothing is. If you go, no, I do know this and I can control that. Really? Take a closer look what you think you can control. There's nothing that you can control. Nothing at all. The closer you look at it. It's a bit of an illusion. You know, we live with an illusion of control, of course. A healthy amount. Yeah. But it's not under closer examination, you go down to the molecules, atoms, or go to bigger and bigger scale. Everything is out of control. So the tendency to be over obsessively, compulsively, disorderly controlling, if you like. Yeah, it's very common. And I think you have to challenge it. You have to sort of go camping. You have to go out from your life laboratory and surrender to things. Games that involve dice. Or things where there's randomness built into it much more. Go to a trip to India and back. You'll see a very out of control experience like that. Go hitchhiking. Go hitchhike. I grew up hitchhiking. I think it was one of the best trainings that I had, because you don't know what's happening from moment to moment and who or what will show up.
Thank you, Bhante. Just lean into the uncontrollableness of it all.
Yeah, go into it more rather than away from it. Away from it will be fear-driven. And it's surprising. Really is. I can just think of countless examples, but I think we've all got, experiences of those. But go bungee jumping, like do things that are very have got that kind of built-in factor of surrender to out of control, being out of control. Or whenever we do things together with other people, our control freakiness hates it because they're out of control. Like our audio echo last week is just like, there's always going to be something. I sympathize with you about that, by the way. I was a sound engineer for a little time, and I did one that reminded me of this incident. Last week on Monday, we gave a talk, and only Tina and Zen had an echo, bam, 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 bam. It was like, what the hell? It was like a nightmare. It was kind of a hell realm all in one. And I felt very much compassion for you there, Zen. My little ego would love to get in there and give you a hammering, but on the bigger picture, I was a sound engineer for a play, and I was, working very closely with the playwright and building the props. And we're in London, and the ultimate moment of it was a play about Unity Mitford, who was an aristocratic woman who dated Adolf Hitler. And when she discovered that Adolf Hitler was Adolf Hitler, she shot herself on a park bench in the head. So this was the ultimate moment of the play. Months of work, rehearsals, and I was in the sound booth, and I just had to press one button, and then the button afterwards was going to be the music of the outro, and instead of it going, it went, and I was like, no, it's the wrong moment. So it could never be rewound. As she went like this, it went, and everyone looked at me, what the hell? And I was like, ah. And the director, the playwright director, was like, doesn't matter, man. It's all right. Let's go down the pub. All right. And I was like, he's got it. He's got it sussed. That's, he could easily have just gone Mr. Angry out of Inside Out. He could have blown his top, but he didn't. He was just so generous. It doesn't matter. These things happen. It's like a, moment of your career gone nuts. So have we got any questions in here? What is it that actually gives rise to worry and fear? Well, that's different for every different opportunity and worry. I mean, often what precedes it, I think these are called secondary responses. It comes from perception. So once you interpret something as a threat, then you'll experience fear. The initial thing, isn't fear. You see a black curly object on the grass. Only when you go, it's a snake, then you get fear. But, then you'll come in and go, oh no, it's a garden hose. Oh, right. Don't worry about it. So there's not one thing, but we have to be careful of that often we're wrong. Often, we're our perception, he's an enemy. She's talking about me. They're planning. That kind of paranoid story making is perception. And we just have to say, is this what came up on previous talk under the subject of being generous, is often we have to give situations the benefit of the doubt. If you're having anxiety and fear, well, actually, that might all just be a big story that can pass. We've had it before. And if you go and do some exercise and go for a walk and come back, your mood will have changed. It's just a mood. It's like, don't believe everything that happens. I know I was spending time very close to someone recently. I haven't got a thing against Australia. We're an Australian who believes their feelings. You know, they built this whole spiritual path that feelings are true and you must believe your feelings. And their life was going into disastrous consequences as a result of that. So I think this is what one of the things that meditation and mindfulness will do, is show you the amount of times a perception is totally randomly wrong and inaccurate and troublesome, you know, troublemaking. She's beautiful. She's just what she is. It will pass. You look at it from another angle. I thought she was pretty good looking. Oh, you've changed your hairstyle. Oh, I don't like you anymore. So, you know, truths and things, you know, and conclusions that our perceptions make are often really wrong, you know, about vital things. We thought we knew our parents. We thought our parents knew us. No, they probably had no idea who we were, and that's fine. That's just normal. That's actually what real life is like. I thought someone had a great job. Actually, no, that job is a nightmare for them. So what is it that actually gives rise to worry and fear is often our interpretations, and that can be changed. That's often the way that cognitive behavioral therapy works, to challenge ideas and get used to being able to do that in a healthy way. So what gives rise to its opposite? You know, how do we give rise to more love? In the same way, we foster healthy perceptions, the ones that we've talked about today. You know. Eugene from the Metta Center to everyone. So thank you, Eddie. Thank you very much for that question. Please keep them coming. It's a bit the shame that this is like this lecture format where everyone's giving them, and I'm like, I've got the wisdom hat on. It'd be nice if it was more like a circle where we could, okay, let's go to breakout rooms or whatever and sit around the circle over a cup of tea and hear everyone's input. Bante, yeah. So there are so many problems to work on and charities to support. How do we prioritize one at a time? So I think it is very, particularly compassion, overwhelm. I was in Sydney in 85 and a woman was really stood there like with her cigarette, like, you know, the ash grew and grew and grew. She was like, it's a bottomless ocean of poor people. And I was saying, no, it's a small bucket. It's not even a bucket, it's a cup. And you're putting a little bit of water in. Look at it like that. You know, I think when you try to think in Western terms, we often try to think politically. What's the political solution? What's the policy that will solve it all? No, sometimes that's the case. But often it's one thing at a time. Then you won't deflect it until later on, until we've figured out the organizational solution or something. No, often they're small things. Often it's much smaller than that. If you start and keep it small, you're suffering. Okay, I can help with that. You haven't got any. Okay, we can have. I don't need this. You can have it. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. You might be scheming, you might be going up, no, you might be, but I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. I think this, through that way, you can get through life. And it's like meditation, one moment, one moment, one moment, one moment. Not taking on a colossal, kind of colossal self-improvement project or something. I heard someone's voice.
No, it could be outside noise, I think.
Okay, so hungry ghost queuing up to get in. So yeah, there are many problems to work on. Sometimes I also have gone, whoa, I need help with this, and I've gone and done that. I did it in the Philippines, and I went to Tzu Chi Foundation, the Taiwanese compassion relief people, and I sat down with them and I said, "How do you handle money? How do?" And they said, "Well, wait a minute, we'll get the accountant and he will talk to you." I said, "Well, how do you do it? You're dealing with a lot of people, an incredible, and they know how to work at scale. But they have very good organization of ideas. We're going to deal with culture, medical aid, education, and art, and arts, or something like that. They've got very well organized things, and how do we structure this?" And they were able to sort of, how do you do that? And also, the more you talked about knowing lots of different charities, lots of charities. Someone comes to you, you can go to that charity. And if they speak a foreign language, which is often the case, they might speak Burmese, or they might speak Nepali, they might speak Hindi, they might speak Filipino, Tagalog, or Bisaya or something, is that you can use much more now ChatGPT, Google Translate, and you can get a creative, meaningful dialogue with them in order to say, they're the people to talk to. I'm not the person, or I would like to be, but I'm just overwhelmed right now. And you can get those very well phrased, the way that AI writes things very well. You read it and go, yep, that's what I want to say. Can you make that in Tagalog or Burmese? And they read it and they go, oh, okay, thank you. And people are usually happy with that. So we got much more fluid, flowing communication possibilities now. Affecting, like I said, I love your involvement with the community in the Philippines, Bante. Like you said, affecting change, one person and family at a time. Yeah. What inspired the Philippines work? When I was 14, I was camping on a beach in France, and around a fire, someone came up, huge pirate earrings, the whole sort of thing, clearly from somewhere really weird, like deep Asia, that kind of thing. And they told me about the Philippines. So I was always in a mood to go there. Then I went there, fell in love with the country, loved it. That was in the 80s, 84. And that was the sort of time I started to meet and experience what you experience there, which is loads of people, very free. They don't have material assets. They don't have brick houses and gardens and cars and all that, or kitchen accessories. No, they have hardly anything. Bamboo hut and a bucket, so and a water pump. So I started to meet it them. Then I fell in love with Buddhism in Thailand, and I settled in Myanmar, and I got on Facebook. I got an invitation from Manila middle-class people who wanted to, they meditated. They'd done a Goenka or something. So they said, we'll fly you here if you're willing to give us a leader retreat. That retreat went well, and somebody said, please stay on longer. After that, after a while, somebody said there's an island, and they've got a yoga center. There aren't any Buddhist temples, many Buddhist temples there at all, but they would be up for you being their resident meditation teacher. How about that? So I said I'd try it month by month. So kind of 8 months later on, it was going all right. But I decided that living in the center was a little bit meh as a monk. So I tried to build a temple, and every day anyway, I was doing my arms around. I kept the arms around practice. That's how I met the communities at close quarters, where every morning, 25 families of 5 people each, and I was getting to know really who they were, what their life was like, what their problems and challenges were. and starting to see this is a creative challenge. This is interesting, and it's rewarding, and it could be what I'm looking for. You know, once you've done a lot of long insight meditation retreats, you're kind of looking around a bit, you know, like that. I think that, you know, it can be, this is missing something a bit, you know, or, you know, you meet some very self-centered people who've been doing that for a long time and you lose faith. And then you're looking for something to boost, you know, especially as a Westerner. So that was, you know, I saw what Suchi were doing. I was very impressed. Whoa, we've got Buddhists and they're doing recycling. Wow. And there's a lot of trash, and they're doing trash, and they're turning to blankets, taking the blankets to, you know, mudslides in Pakistan, and, you know, doing all kinds of flood relief and poverty, you know, help. And wow, well, this is a different Buddhism that I'm not used to. So that's kind of how the Filipino thing started off. And I'm not a conformist. You might have noticed. I'm not very much of a conformist. And the idea of having a kind of big blank canvas kind of appealed to me, where I wasn't, you know, going to have eyes on all the time, which you have, you know, in Thailand and Myanmar. Everyone has expectations on the monks, which is a mixed blessing. So it's a good thing, you know, it keeps you in line. And it was nice to have a bit of freedom to be able to scribble. See if I can build a temple. It's kind of cheap here, you know, see what happens. And like I say, the giving thing just seemed a humane response. That's what inspired the Philippines work, I think, to say. It changed over time. At first, there was a child who had apparently telepathic powers. That appealed to me. That was one of my main things I was very interested in. I believe now that it wasn't telepathic powers. I believe it was a swollen brain. So there's also, I've gone through a bit of a transformational arc from being a little bit more, you know, wanting to see the shamanistic, the magical, the voodoo, you know, a little bit of that. And I've become more scientific, I think. I haven't altogether lost that. But I think she had Japanese encephalitis, which causes the brain to swell up, which makes you hallucinate. So I think it came out as religious hallucinations. So that was one of my original inspirations. So it changed. Inspiration should change, I think. You know, I think the light of truth, as you clear the veil, you know, as you become more switched onto the way things really work. Thanks for the questions, then. I'm always happy to open and share that kind of thing. Simran Prasad. What does that means? Divine grace or something, doesn't it? Prasad.
Oh.
I think.
Yeah, prasad is like holy offerings, like in Hindi.
Yeah,
like
isn't that
prasad?
the food in
Yes,
Hare
the
Krishna?
blessed food.
Garden,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
And Simran.
It's a Sanskrit word, because I'm also like my family's half Sikh, and that word Simran means like the remembrance of God.
The reverence of God.
The remembrance.
Remembrance of God. Great, beautiful to have meaningful names like that. How can we practice loving ourselves and others all equally? I never said that. Equally, so we can be more compassionate to all. Oh yeah, rather than selectively favor. No, I think that's okay. The people close. Oh yeah, close to us is a sort of cortisol-driven thing. You know, my football group, my football team. I don't say that we shouldn't be somewhat selective, but basing it on what? I think that's the thing. Like the way that the Buddha would meditate in the morning, and he would know out of all of the people who was precisely right, but ready. And that's the person, you know, he would teach. So that's like there was this story of the weaver's daughter who the Buddha knew, you know, with his insight, he knew she was just ready. This day was a vital thing for her to hear. And he came to a meeting, and all the people were there, blah, 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 and they were chatting and chatting, and they were just treating it like a sort of gathering. And the Buddha sort of talked over them and said, that girl right at the back, bring her to the front. And he said, where are you going? And she said, I don't know. And all the women went, oh, that's just not the way to talk to the Buddha. And he said, and where are you coming from? She said, I don't know. And they went, she's being really cheeky. And then he said, don't you know? And she said, I know. And he said, do you know? She goes, I don't know. And they were getting really fed up. Like, there was this lippy girl. She's like being rude and arrogant. It's the Buddha. You should bow and keep your mouth shut. And he said, no, explain your answers. She said, I've been meditating on death for 3 years now, since you were last here giving a talk. And every day I've considered this, what you said about impermanence. That when you said to me, where am I coming from? You meant the previous birth. Do I know my previous birth that was here before I was born? I said, I don't know. And he said, do you know where you're going? Then you said, do you know where you're going to? Meaning, after I die, do I know exactly where I'll be born? And I said, no, I don't know. That's what I meant. And then you asked me, do you know? And you meant, do I know that I will die? And I said, yes. And then he said, don't you know that it could happen? And you meant that it can happen at any time. So I said, yeah, I know. And everyone went, whoa, wow, these two are on a different plane. She went to the weaver's shed of her father, and her father was asleep on a loom. And as she came in and made a noise, he woke up and the loom clacked off and the shuttle shot through and cracked her in the chest and killed her dead instantly. The father gave up weaving and became a monk. So it was a story about this sort of all things. It's one of those stories that it combines a lot of things, you know, right in there. Is that the Buddha was being selective at that time. He wasn't going to waste, you know, like being loving to all of these chattering people who are just gossiping and, you know, chatting about the day's affairs and stuff. Is that we can be generally equanimous and loving in general, you know, to all people, because we don't have any reason to be otherwise. But we can also use our Dhammavichaya, our investigation part, to look at what's going on around us and inquire. So metta is important to be loving with all people, but it's only one aspect. So we also need to use our wisdom and our discrimination mind to say, this person is being very wasteful and foolish and going really nowhere, but I love them still just the same. So it's like being a teacher in a classroom, is that you're going to see a huge range of different people, and yes, you're going to be equal to all. And as you say, that our relatives, sometimes we have to do that distancing and deliberately exposing ourselves to other people and cultures in order to get used to that. And that's often a huge blessing in disguise. Often you know, by remaining caught in our own little groups way too much, it's often toxic. And that's why it can be a breath of fresh air to travel. Go to other cultures, expose yourself. You don't know who's going to be there. You know, you don't know who you're going to meet on the way. And often that's the beauty of life. And often it's the stagnation of people to remain, yes, where are you going? Where are you going? I'm coming back. But where are you back later? It's getting caught in these tiny little loops of over-relating with the same people and not exposing ourselves to enough newness. Does that answer your question somewhat? Or does
Yes,
it?
thank you, Bhante.
Great. Well, thank you for asking, Simran. I appreciate your question. Tina, thank you, Bhante. How do we contemplate death in a way that is useful and gentle and not overwhelming? There was a book when I was in Tokyo, and it was called Accumulus, but it was all dead leaves, photos of dead leaves in ponds, frozen in ice, here, there, and everywhere. And that was like a very subtle, on the sort of subtle end of the spectrum. I think if you study science, I was listening to a book by Bill Bryson called A Brief History of Everything, something like that. And there he's really talking about death. It's amazingly Buddhist because he's talking just about what actually has always happened. So it's like, and what is. So, you know, when you hear about what happened with the dinosaurs and what happened at the time, or how many countless generations and civilizations have come and gone. And then it talks about, you know, the length of one life, which is what this is it. This is the Bante life, you know. There haven't been any others cause that. It wasn't always called Bante, it was called something else, and now soon it will be. I go back to the Philippines and they go, hey, Brad. And I'm like, what? Who's Brad? My name, which was Brother Ben, got morphed Venerable, because they could, if you say Bante, it sounds like panties in Filipino. And I was like, no, don't call me that. Don't call me Venerable. And they're like, what? I said, Venerable. Call me Venerable. And all right, call me Ven. And they're like, Ben. And I, no, Ben. All right, yeah, call me Ben. And then it become Brother Ben. And then it got morphed into Brad. Hey, Brad, Brother Brad, come on, Brad. I'm like, I'm not married to Angelina Jolie, you know. So yeah. So sometimes contemplating death. My dad said something strange. He grew up with an Irish mother. He said, you know, people don't seem to die much nowadays. And I was like, Dad, what the hell? You've lost it, you know. You know. But then I realized when I lived in the Filipino culture, in the community there, in that sort of 3 years, 2.5 years when I was there, I saw more death than I'd ever seen. So my dad's generation he was born in 1940. So there was the war, first of all. So how much death that there was seen from that. And then after the war, the infant mortality was enormous. It was very, you know, it was a risky thing to have a child. And this is what I saw in the Philippines. There was so many, you know, born with cleft palates, or dying of pneumonia, dying of diarrhea, elderly people getting cancer, and they just died, you know. And there was many, you know, just so much death going on. So it's actually very sobering to be around that. And it's another good reason to go to those places, because in the sanitized, you know, American dream sort of, I've got nothing against America, world that we live in, it's not visible. You don't really see. In the Philippines, when someone dies, they lay in the sitting room in a cask, open cask, for like 7 days or something. So it's like a lot of things that they're much more, you know, gritty. They're much more grounded. What things are really, you know, really are for. They don't joke about sex, because the consequences of sex are life and death, not just like illness and everything. But if a girl gets pregnant, they're really aware from a very young age. You know, they're walking around carrying babies from the time they're 6 years old or 7 years old. They really are aware, you know, that breasts are for breastfeeding. So for, you know, Western culture sort of distorts a lot of things, or affluence sort of distorts values. So with Buddha, it was like, go and look at corpses. Well, that's one kind of way I was transformed, because I don't think I'd ever seen death. I had a cousin who died of cystic fibrosis at age 10. Yeah, you know, I was kind of a bit aware, but nothing quite as... And also my priorities were very different. You know, they were really career focused. This whole thing of these realities slewing across that interfere with your plans, that's another thing altogether. Yeah, so I could say a lot about, you know, those. Everyone here in the room has got, you know, death experiences that they can relate to with that. So I think looking closely, or even closer, at your relationships that you're already in, there is a lot of, it's probably enough. I mean, I think that's also, you know, all the different lessons, you have to have a slice of everything. And generally speaking, they are already there. Like I was saying, just look at the death and decay actually around you. We normally screen that out. And even if it's dead leaves or the trees decaying or dying of something, it's there. And people, one of the beautiful things of doing a bintabada, going out with the alms bowl, is to see old and sick people so much. Because in the marketplace, particularly these kind of marketplaces, hawkers market they're called, you get a lot of people who are bordering on, you know, just having a few little nothings to sell. They're really living on a very low income. Yeah, I think those things. But we learn it, right, from when we're taking care of pets as children. I had a pet rabbit and it got mauled by a fox. That was like my first experience of death in that kind of way. So I don't think, I did do it with photos of corpses. And I don't think it's really the way. I think this is one of the things where engaging in the world, whatever you do, will bring it to you sooner or later, you know, and avoiding an avoidant life, you know, a life that stays too sanitized or too removed is not good. So wherever you go and get engaged, you know, someone's experiencing it around you that you could get closer to and talk to them. So the emotional part of it, like loss and that complicated stages of grief. I'm talking there to one of the people I was referring to, whose mother just died of cancer, and then they found out a double whammy that, you know, their lover also died at the same time. When they said no one's there to listen to them, that no one's interested, they won't give them time. And then I was just say, well, I'm listening, so open up. And the way that they described that, you know, the coldness, the numbness inside, that they'd all this sort of loss of purpose in living, that they had this emptiness that couldn't ever feel like it's never going to be filled. These are really beautiful experiences. And since I meditated, now, you know, 18 years and a whole lot of other things in between of practices, I'm not really likely to going to be feeling those kind of feelings. I would have done earlier in my career. I don't think I'm likely to, because I don't form those kind of, yeah, that was her mother, you know, my mother's also going to die soon. I don't think I'll experience that same kapow, you know, when you really like you've lost a limb, like, and you've got that phantom limb pain there, that kind of thing. I don't tend to form attachments that will have that, you know, rocketing, you know, rock you to your core thing. How are we doing for time?
Yeah. Thank you so much, Bhante. You're right on time. Actually, we're 8:32, so we're slightly behind, but in Australian time, we're right on time.
Oh, you 2 minutes.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you. Thank you so much for the very wonderful talk. I think, you know, we have speakers that talk about death, talk about, you know, like mindfulness, compassion as separate topics. This might be one of the first talks where there's such intricate links between all of those. And I especially love the way you talk about death in such a beautiful way, where it's not just us, it's like everything around us, it's impermanent. So if we take the self out of it, it's just part of the world. I love the way you asked the questions and the way you linked everything together, where you linked this, we're able to experience the softer parts of self-care, compassion, and how that like works together with the not so soft parts of, for example, death and gloom and loss and so on. So, Bhante, would you like to do a bit of dedication of merits before we close out?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
would. I'd like to share these merits also with my mother. I'd like to share it with Amory Lee, who recently died, and her family. I'd like to share it with all sentient beings or any other beings that I may have overlooked. Sam Stansfield was a supporter in England who died recently. So anyone else, my cousins, and also people beyond relations, and also North west, south, east, and all supporters and sponsors and all people who have come forward, all the relatives of all the people who have been in attendance and listening, for my teachers also, who are all mostly passed on, and my gratitude to them. So to both my parents, sorry, and all other beings who wish to receive the merits from this Dhamma talk. Idang me bunyang asavakayang wahang hotu. Idang me nyatinang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. Idang me nyatinang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. Idang me nyatinang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. Idang me bunyang nibbanasa pachayo hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. Yata varivaha pura paripurenti sagaran. Devameva todinang petanang pakapati. Ititang patitang tumam kepameva samejatu. Sabe purantu sankapa janto panaraso yata manijo tiraso yata. Sabitio vivachandu. Sabaro go vanasatu. Mate pavadvantarayo. Sukhidi ka yugo bhavam. Abhivadana silesa. Nityang Vata Pachayinam Chataro Dhamma Vadante Ayavano Sukhang Balam Bhavatu Sapamangalam Rakantu Sapa Devata Sapa Buddha Nupavena Sada Suti Bhavantu Te Bhavatu Sapamangalam Rakantu Sapa Devata Sabadhamma nupavena sada suti bhavantu te. Bhavatu sapamangalam rakantu sapa devata sapa sangha nupavena sada suti bhavantu te. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Thank you, Bante. And for everyone else as well, if you're wanting to learn more about Bante, his work in the Philippines, the link is in the chat. And also, if you would like to donate, Bante has not asked us to broadcast this, but if you'd like to donate to Bante, we have his details as well. So please, I guess, get in touch with Zen. I think that's what he said. So yeah. So without further ado, we will do some announcements before we finish off this session. So Monday meditation sessions, we have meditation specific sessions. Yes, so Zaz put some, yeah, for those who wish to offer support, those are Bante's details for donation. Again, Bante did not ask us to talk about this, but it's purely if you would like to have the means to, you're free to make some offering. So yes, Monday we have meditation sessions. They're in person in Bankstown, Western Sydney University campus, as well as online. And those sessions are dedicated to us practicing together as a group, learn the techniques of meditation and so on. Bante mentioned that he did give a talk on that last week. Tuesdays we have yogas. It's also in person at Bankstown. Wednesdays we have Wisdom Wednesday sessions in person in Parramatta, Western Sydney University, as well as online. And then we also have a Ajahn Thanissaro teaching tour coming up. So Ajahn Thanissaro is a great meditation teacher, scholarly monk. So we're very lucky to have him come to Australia. He'll be in Sydney for 2 days. If you're interested, it will be in November. You can find out more information on Metta Centre's website. Or ask for the bus. Also call out to if you'd like to join the Metta Centre Friends group. We have a WhatsApp group. You can also follow us on social media and mailing lists if you're interested to know more. So yeah, thank you so much everyone for joining us in person as well as online. This, it's such a good opportunity to practice together as a group and listen to teachers like Bante today to learn about this very important wisdom on how we can better our own lives and people around us in terms of happiness, which is not something we get taught often, right? Because the society always teaches us about material wealth, but not spiritual or wisdom wealth. So yeah, I'll stop talking. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a lovely evening and see you next week. Bye.
Thank you, Bante.
Thank you.
Bante.
Thank you, everyone. It's been a great privilege.
Thank you, Bante.